One of these days, since we always speak to executives, we usually wonder actually what they usually want in people they usually work for, and also what the expectations of the board are required. So with us today, we brought on Stephen, who will dissect all those things which a board requires from someone who is below the food chain, and also him himself when he's placed at the board level. What do they actually require from him? So, Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I'll let Angela take on the profile of Stephen.
I hope I do it justice. Stephen, you're welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
And today we are delighted to host Stephen Mwesige, who is a cybersecurity professional with over 14 years experience in information security. Stephen has a bachelor's degree in information technology from Uganda Christian University and an executive MBA from Harvard University. He majors in cybersecurity, managing risk with the information age. Has several certifications like a certified ethical hacker and ISO 27001 lead implementer. Stephen is an expert in innovation security, AI, and blockchain solutions. And he's passionate about implementing transformative cybersecurity programs. Stephen, we are delighted to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
He wants to make a correction.
Yes, like correction. From Harvard, I got a certificate in cyber risk management, but for the MBA, I'm currently doing an MBA in artificial intelligence and blockchain, which I feel that they are emerging technologies, and it's important you can't secure what you don't know, and this is where tech seems to be moving to.
And speaking of the board, we are looking at him also working for Postbank as the head of IT security. So you should talk to him very well. He might be having some openings.
It may be. Actually, interestingly, this industry, there are some regulations, guidelines that are coming up from the regulator, especially in financial, which seem it also create a lot of movements across the industry. So there are definitely opportunities. They have already always been there, but more opening up. Yeah.
Okay. So please tell us about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
Yeah, as I'll not go detailed into the prelude that has been mentioned about my profile, but how I got into cyber. I started my career at an NGO as a system administrator. After a couple of years of doing system admin work, I was just bored of the day-to-day tasks. And being an NGO, there's nothing much that is going on there except printers. I remember the first issue I found when I joined the first week was the printer was down. We had never seen a printer in my
Your IT. And they will scream, IT, my printer is not working.
You're the guy. So that was the first time I learned how to use Google effectively to find solutions.
Seriously?
So look for drivers, look for what. I went all sorts of forums, and it was exciting. But after a year or so, you get a hang of every issue that the organization may face, and I'd like to innovate, to advance, to do things, and I felt that I was doing the same thing over time. So when I was looking at what could I do next in this field, because tech was the field that I liked, I came across cybersecurity. And at the time, I looked for an institute that could train it here. I couldn't find one. I was fortunate that I was facilitated by my parents at the time to go and study cyber in India. And when I came back from studying it, I found a consulting firm, did that for a while, and started getting. I found it was an area that I really enjoy because things change every other day, and you can never be. It can't be the same as it was yesterday. So, from my experience as an admin, as I also carried it over to the cyber bit to focus more on defense. I think that's where I like to focus my effort on prevention rather than a cure. I also did some work with the consulting firm as a forensic investigator, but it was one of the worst experiences I had in cyber because one, it's and that time was much earlier on in my career. You trying to how to recover data. The client already knows once they have brought you on board, it's assured that you're going to find the culprit and you're going to take them to prison. But find a smart culprit was hard, but the client's expectations and also what we could deliver was not matching. So that pressure, I said no. I'd rather focus on what? On defense.
On defense.
Yeah. Let me prevent it from happening other than coming post-mortem, because post-mortem it's lengthy. A job which is a 1 month thing, does 6 months, you're still in forensics. So that's where I focused my effort, and it's what I've done, say, at Postbank, that I've been there a couple of now, maybe 4 years. And really the effort I've done at Postbank is to go to shift left, to start to have security embedded within everything that we do from the start to as we're executing and as we do our day-to-day operations. And I think it's something that I've enjoyed doing at Postbank. It's also the advantage at Postbank is that it gives you the platform and the capacity to implement what you feel is best and what works best. And throughout my tenure, we have seen upgrade of systems, launch of our digital wallet, Wendy. Postbank has a fintech license, so we are both have a banking license and a fintech license, and I oversee that whole chain of cyber defense and also proactive security, and also in the instances when it does happen, response. Yeah.
That's interesting to say. And how do you make up for, how do you convince the board to budget effectively for your defense work at Postbank?
Interestingly, when I joined, that was one of the first things I had to do was make a budget for the department, and at that time it was a unit. And I see one thing is to match security. I think one of the earliest things that I found works is to match security to facilitating the business. If you're looking at security as a business facilitator, it's easier to speak the language that the executives understand, as opposed to they are going to hack us, we need to protect against hackers and the like. Because I can give you a case in point. So when I joined the bank, I think a large majority of our transactions were over the counter. And we had the bank wanted to move to digital and move people outside the branches. But that could only happen if the channels are secure enough to facilitate someone to do their transactions and also to be without being compromised, and be for our customers to have confidence in those systems. The only way to drive that confidence was investing in cyber to ensure that the appropriate controls are in place. So that's the discussion. That's how I approach that discussion, in that, you see, this is our strategy as a bank. To achieve this strategy, this is where we need to be in terms of security. And to be where we need to be, this is the investment we need to make. And once, you can't say numbers that you invest this in security, you shall get this amount of money, this reward. No, but it could help that, say, if you invest in security, we can be able to achieve the strategy the bank wants of digital transformation. And I joined at a point when it was actually, the Postbank was doing the structure. It was also embarking on a digital transformation journey. That's when we replaced all our ATMs with smart ATMs, so every Postbank ATM can take deposits and also issue out that same cash that it has taken as a deposit. So we're doing all these projects, and we had to I had to raise the discussion that yes, that's where we are going. We know the risks that are happening globally and locally. We need to secure that area. And some discussions you hear when for those that are in that position, someone can say, okay, we have invested in this, so we should not get hacked. And don't
Exactly.
don't fall for that question, because it's move the discussion towards, when there's an incident, we shall be able to identify it and mitigate it before it causes harm to the bank. At least you cannot expect never to have an incident, but what we should work on is to ensure that if there's something that happens, we should be able to identify it quickly enough to mitigate it before it causes financial loss or reputational damage to the organizations that we are entrusted with protecting. So it's it's really an assurance job, and you have money. You need assurance you need money to do assurance. So how you provide that value to the organization you're working for is really tied to what the organization's goals are.
So, what challenges did you encounter while getting into cybersecurity, and which helped build your career? What are those challenges that helped build your career?
I would say at the time when I joined the industry, it was lack of, one of the challenges was lack of information. Like I told you, I tried to look for where can I study cyber. And throughout doing the searches, doing the reviews, checking everywhere, the best place we could find was, at that time, was India. But also when I got back, interestingly, when I got back, I looked for people who are in the industry who you can share ideas with and bounce ideas off, see what are they doing. We hardly found any. And even when we would, because I was working with a consulting firm, when we would go to clients to pitch how you can protect your organization, what you need to put in place, it was more of client education. We had the clients who would say, but we have not been hacked, so why do we need to invest this money in cyber? So the awareness was lacking, and it was hard to push the agenda and say that this is an actual risk. It seemed that people who get hacked are not in Uganda. The movies, it seemed like that, and most of the people you'd interact with who are in the positions of making decisions, they were not really exposed to the risk that cyber actually carries. And that caused that. How it helped me is that I would have to do a lot of reading, a lot of research to see how do you put this discussion to someone who doesn't really get it and is not really welcoming to the idea of investing in cyber. So because of that, you have to, nothing came easy. And that was the advantage, that you had to research about these companies. What is their strategy? How can you tie what we are trying to sell as a consultant? And I think joining when I was in the consulting industry for cyber, it was an advantage because you get to meet many clients, see what they think about cyber before I go to this side of actually doing defense. So that you see, because security is always changing, so you have to develop that muscle and that interest to keep on also checking and seeing what is latest. Now, when you're checking, going to approach client X and client Y, you have to see what applies to them. And it causes you to keep on reading. Now, it's a thing that I see also in our industry right now. We don't have too much that desire to know more in these areas of cyber, which are kind of specialized, is what limits anyone who is joining the industry to actually do it, to actually go further. Because when I joined, you hardly find things like dumps. Now, you'll get a dump, go do an exam, get a certificate, and you're certified. But do you have the knowledge is the issue. So this, and there have been many people, actually, you see them on LinkedIn all the time trying to sell you exams. That do you want to do the exam, or we can do it for you? So now you're not sure about the people who have these certificates. Are they actually, do they have the skills that are needed for the task at hand? And I've seen that was the advantage that I had, that I was looking for skills as opposed to just getting papers, and it has built my career to be able to at least approach defense from a practical sense rather than from a theoretical or exam sense. Yeah.
That's interesting because you see, also like maybe it's easy with a bank, it's easy to explain that risk to a certain point, but people should know that data is a new gold. Anyone can be hit at any time. You know, we hosted some a cybersecurity professional. He worked here right before the pandemic, and they were hit by ransomware. And he was working in a health institution. So he's like, he said he was traumatized. He even remembered it was yuck. You know, you never know someone would need your hospital information until you're hit, and then you know. But yeah, it's better to put up these controls. So what are the basic pillars to get to yourself? Basic pillars that have held you up in the cybersecurity industry?
I would say first and foremost is integrity, because without integrity, it will be hard to actually be on the side of defense. Because what can be the fire that burns the house can also cook for you food. So to have to yield, because you know you are the gate man. It's like if you take it in case in point in physical security, someone who you have entrusted with protecting your household can also open the door for people to get in. So the number one thing I would say is integrity. And unfortunately, it's not something that you can just see in an interview. It's something that you really have to do some further checks on the people that we are trying to onboard. And that integrity you carry it wherever you go, because people are going to cross-check and say, oh, we are trying to onboard Steven. How was he at your organization? So I think that's my number one pillar, is to work with integrity. At least wherever I go, I should leave an impression that I was someone of integrity and I'm trustworthy, because you provide assurance. Now, if they're not sure about you, how do you start providing that assurance? It becomes hard. And also the continuous learning. I've specialized in cybersecurity, but right now I'm learning AI and blockchain because I know they're emerging, and I need to advise our management, who is also thinking about those same pillars, that how can we approach that AI and blockchain in a way that guarantees the security and assurance of our customers and us customer data and our systems. So I'm not waiting for someone, for a regulator to say, now we have passed a law. No, I want to move ahead of what the industry is thinking, so that I can be in position to provide that assurance. So it's many things here and there on trying to move ahead of what the industry is thinking, that helps you be in a position where you can do proper advisory, but also be an all-rounder. Because like I mentioned earlier, you can't secure what you don't know. So you find you need a common body of knowledge around various technologies, around various architectures, around various policies, things like that. What has worked in another country, can it be applied here? What has worked at, because and what I would call that a pillar is, you'll be in a position where you're the one to make a decision, right? Or say this is the direction we are taking. Say you've advanced, you're in an executive role or a leadership role. Now, a leader needs to know at least what they are going to give advice on. The difference between cyber and other areas of leadership is, you need technical knowledge, but also you need leadership skills and business understanding of how are you relating these technology controls in regards to the business. Now, if you don't have a common body of knowledge across those various aspects of understanding the business, understanding the tech, and understanding the controls, you're one-sided, because you'll find many cyber professionals are very good at tech, but they can't explain these things in a holistic approach that ideally makes sense to someone who has to make a decision on whether to spend or not. Now, because you need to have that common body, it requires continuous learning, continuous engagement. And which leads me to my third pillar, is stakeholder management. Because remember, you're going to change how people are operating if you want to change if you want to build for the future. So how do you bring these key stakeholders on board to see the vision that you're trying to pass on for the security or the protection of the organization that you're with? And you'll find many people who have moved from tech to leadership, they like to sit behind their PCs. Now, decisions are not made behind the PC. It needs you to meet someone, discuss with them, engage them, have those interpersonal discussions. Sometimes you might need to meet outside the office. Sometimes you may need to attend some parties with them. and this is ideal to get people to listen to you other than Stephen the policeman. Yeah? Because when you're in security, you may think like you're the police. But how do I relay the risk to you in a way that you feel like, okay, yes, this makes sense. I didn't understand it in the slides that they sent or the PDF or the email, but this one makes sense, and we actually see the need to put this in place. So that stakeholder management is something that we miss a lot. We feel that because we are security, we can just say allowed or deny, but it's much more than that. You really need to understand the people you're working with, the organization you're working in, and its goals, and how you can support the organization meet their goals. So for me, I would say those are the three main pillars, which would be integrity, continuous learning, and stakeholder management.
Yes, interesting. So when it comes to stakeholder management, now they are managing you under Postbank. So how do they manage you, and what are the KPIs that they use to manage you to see actually whether you are moving in the direction of what they are trying to pursue?
Yeah, definitely are being managed, but you need numbers or metric or KPIs to provide assurance. And I'd say one of them is the time to detect, respond, and resolve an incident, because like I mentioned, that you can't expect to never have an incident. But what we can work on is to ensure that we can detect them within a reasonable time, respond within a reasonable time, and resolve them before they cause harm. So that time to detect, management would want to know, is our security team, can they actually see these things? Or we are just living by the grace of God? You may have no incident because you're not it's not yet your time. But when it is, are you able to detect that someone is actually, we're under attack, and can you be able to respond and resolve those incidents within a reasonable time and without causing harm? Then also the number of incidents, because if we are having 5 incidents every month, I would want to know that why is it happening, and how can we reduce that to either numbers within acceptable risk, or because if you're always having these incidents, how can you be able to learn from them and mitigate and put in the appropriate controls to prevent them from happening again? So the reduction in number of incidents, but also repeat incidents, is something that ideally management would want to know if we are actually maturing as a program. And compliance to regulatory and industry standards. We have regulatory requirements. How are we doing in terms of compliance to those? If you're certified, like for example, Postbank is PCI DSS certified, and we're in the process of getting ISO 27001, the 22 version certified. So as we certify with these standards, how are we complying to these standards? Because when you fall out of compliance, you run the risk of losing that certification. And also, if you fall out of compliance with the regulator, it could attract a fine, which could cause a form of financial loss to the bank in this case. And also things like the budget utilization. How much did we budget for in terms of security? How much have we utilized? Could there have been some areas of cost saving, or what is the return on investment? For example, if we say that if we bought ABCD solution to secure this area, would facilitate the growth of our digital channels. So now that it's in place, how are we looking at in terms of facilitation of that growth? Has it actually come through, or have we bought it and we have not have we not realized the benefits of this investment? They would also be looking at maybe downtime related to security related incidents. How much, because downtime also attracts loss. Loss of business, loss of opportunity. So how much money would we have lost? Have we lost because the systems are being down due to a cyber related incident? So it ties to incident management, but also it speaks to the profitability and the progress of the organization in terms of its main goal, which most are to make money. And also awareness. How are we doing? We do phishing tests internally to test our staff, because that was one of the weakest links in any system. So how are we doing in terms of our staff? What is the culture? And here, what we look out for, especially when you're doing these tests, we don't look out for really the guys who are failing. Yes, there will be people who fail time and again, but we're looking, of course, for repeats. Those guys who keep on repeating to fail. What's the problem there? But also, we're looking at how many reports of these let's say phishing links are coming through from the staff. Because if you have run an assessment and you get more staff reporting than those actually failing, you can say that, okay, the training we have been doing, the awareness we have been doing, the culture is actually improving. Our staff can actually identify these phishing alerts and phishing emails and be able to report them. So our program really focuses more on reporting. How is it? Can our staff able to identify these and report them? And that's really how you ensure you assess the culture and the level of awareness of your staff. The courses have they done the appropriate trainings, and are they able to identify and report these incidents, or whether it's via mail or anything that ideally impacts the security of the organization. So I'd pick a high level. Those are some that ideal management really is keen on looking at.
That's interesting. And mostly, I would like to know, are there any programs for continued learning for the staff, the security staff? Because you could implement all these tools, but do they have the skills to use them? How do you make sure they do?
One thing I always tell my team, and even across the bank, really, who is implementing solutions, is no one, you see, there's relying on the vendor to implement the solution to the way that it should be implemented. But no one knows the business, the intended goal, because when you're budgeting for this thing, you know what it wanted to do. No one knows that better than the people who are in the defense or who are supposed to be using those things on a day-to-day. So one thing that I really emphasize is training of whatever platform you're onboarding. First, get some staff certified in that solution before it comes on board, because that helps with the teams that are tasked with implementing this, at least the internal teams. They can ask the appropriate questions to the vendor who is supplying this solution. Now, the challenge you find is that when you let the vendor implement what he feels is best for you, the vendor is not tasked with ensuring regular monitoring and use of that particular solution. For them, after once they have get paid their last installment, they are now just the invoice for maintenance. So they are not really interested. And you'll find that it begs the question, so we have implemented this solution, why are we still getting hacked? Yes? So you can only effectively utilize it if you've been well versed in it prior to it coming on board. That's on the part of solutions. But also there are platforms like INE, which are good for continual learning, because INE has an assortment of cloud, network, cybersecurity trainings. And one subscription gives you access to all those practical trainings, even with the labs. So I find that the INE, our teams are onboarded on INE and any practical, because it has practical class trainings and even certifications. We found that to be something. And for me, I really hold, as much as they have access, I really hold the my team accountable to ensure that they're actually doing the training. So may I have a dashboard that I log in and see the hours they have spent training, and if they are supposed to be certified, the KPIs, or if they have actually got certified. Because there's having this training, you have spent money to give you access, but you're not actually utilizing it. And for me, my goal is to see that for example, if my staff has gone through a web penetration testing course, I should see an improvement in the quality of reports that they are doing when they are doing assessment of web applications within the bank. The report prior to training and after should not be the same. I know that for you have not learned much. So it's that push to ensure that the training is effective and it's actually being applied. And you can't afford not to train. Sometimes you hear the statements that we train these guys, then they leave us. But the worst thing is having someone you have not trained and he stays. It's worse. You rather train them. It's worse to have them that you have not trained. And they stay. They can stay because they're not being taken, and you're stuck with them. They are not paid enough to be taken.
No one wants them.
No one wants them. Now you're stuck with them. You're not training them. So you don't know what to do with them. They just make your life hard. So we make sure we train and ensure that they do what? The quality of reporting or the quality of monitoring has to be impacted by that training. And it's something that we look out for in terms of post-training engagements with the staff. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We shall put INE in our show notes so that people can.
There's also Hack in the Box, but Hack in the Box is a bit too specific on cyber. But INE has quite a number of other trainings, because if you are going into cloud, everyone now is talking, hey, cloud, how can we prepare for it? There's a whole cloud training path on INE that you can know these cloud technologies before you have to know what you're going to protect, really. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So, as we are finalizing, what would be your, as an executive, you always control the fire coming from the top and the one which is emerging from the bottom. So how do you, find a way of, keeping things together and ensuring that people do not fight each other? So
that one is an interesting one. I think mine is, before, as an executive, move ahead of what management is thinking. Because when you move ahead, it helps you set clear targets, or targets which are beyond management's expectations for your team below. So, case in point, if our goal was to have no incident, right? That's really management. When it comes cyber, that's one of the main things, is to let's not have any financial loss. How do you relate that in actionable targets for your team below? So it's to understand, what does it take to deliver these KPIs? Because KPIs are actually cascaded up, going down, up to the last person. So for you, who is cascading to your team, do you have actionable things that you can actually measure? Because until you're breached, you may not know all the effort that has gone into ensuring that you are protected to this point in time. The day you're breached, all that effort is to zero. But they say, we are hacked, where were you? You say, no, we are building all these things. But they say, but yeah, we're still what? Hacked. Now, for management usually wants to get that assurance that we are on top of things. Now, assurance in security, sometimes you have to, not sometimes, more or less, you have to have no friends. Because let me tell you, the person who is messing up, who is dropping the ball, has a direct correlation with whether you stay in the organization or not. So there's no hush speaking undertone under the table that, can you cover this up? It has to be very clear. The risk has to be well articulated to management. hide nothing, because the unfortunate thing is feeling like we'll manage this without management's view. The day an incident happens, you say that we're working on it, but management says we didn't know of this risk. So be very clear in identifying and reporting the risk at hand, and also let management also be actionable, because the security, unfortunately, we have all the accountability, but the responsibility doesn't fully lie with security. For example, if there's a patch that needs to be applied, you as the team who is doing security can identify that this needs to be applied, this is the exposure, but you're not the ones who are supposed to patch it. It's most likely IT. So the responsibility can be IT, but when you're breached and it was through that gap, you're the one who is taking the grant for all this, for the short end of the stick, that you're breached. No one is saying, okay, there was a patch where they passed. They said, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you? So work as much as possible to the people who are responsible for the exposure. It should be known. Also, the clear reporting to management on how are we doing as security across the bank, across the industry, what could affect us, what's happening in the industry that could affect us, where are our gaps, what is the action that what is needed to close these gaps, and where are we in closing these gaps. This has to be very clear to management, because, and while it is clear to management, you also have to be very clear to your team and hold them accountable. If there's a gap that if there's a shortfall in identification, you should hold them accountable, and you should give appropriate cautions or appropriate actions to mitigate it, that this doesn't happen again. The key thing I see is in security, especially when you're dealing with the pressure going down, is repeat findings. Why aren't we learning from these incidents? Why can't we mitigate it in advance? So it's really an issue of accountability at both sides. Accountability going up and accountability going down. You're in the middle there, but you're the guy who is entering meetings and people don't want to see you, or they see mail and they say, this security guy is sending mail. And you should be able to articulate it, that you don't sound like a chatterbox. There's where you say too much, and they just someone will create a folder for Steven and put it there. Whatever people come enter there, they don't see them. So you should be well articulated to the business that this is the exposure, because how does risk department do it that gets management to respond, and security raises it and is not being responded to? So you see, because risk management is level 2, so risk will raise an issue, whether it's operation or what, and you'll find action around that issue. Why isn't security at that same level of where you can raise that issue? So maybe we need to pick a leaf from how risk is raising their concerns and the exposure. Or maybe we need to partner with risk to raise this in the forums that risk raises them, and they're getting action. So it's that reporting, I say it's reporting and accountability, and ensuring proper actions are taken to close those gaps. Because if you've done a good enough job there, yes, there might be a blind side where you didn't see it, but all the effort you have done before could weigh in your favor to reduce on the pressure, because this security gaps are always evolving day and night. So that 0 day that came up and you are blindsided to it, it's when you have been reporting everything else well, that reporting and accountability would weigh in your favor. The guys who I see are always at the short end of the stick is if management didn't even know of these issues and they are finding it out when there's an incident. That is the worst position to be in as someone who is between management and the teams below. Yeah.
Sure, and it will be sad when the 0 day comes right after they've approved your budget and yeah, they're sure them things are working.
Yeah,
Go for more budget.
And then And that's what they ask, but where were you? And they
Yeah,
won't want to know it's a zero dot. Nope.
yeah, and that
Yes.
is that is really, it's for me. I think the where are you question is clear reporting. What are we doing as security? Because when everything is good, there may not be much reporting, but you should report your successes and exposures clearly to management to know where are we right now. If all the success you have been doing and mitigating and what has never been reported, the day you have a breach, they say these guys have actually even been doing nothing all this
Nothing.
time.
You don't know what they do. They're just clicking.
What do they do? So it should be very clear. Your reporting has to be very on point and actionable and insightful. Don't just say this is a report what, and no one has. If you report once or twice and no one has any questions to your report, maybe you're not communicating effectively. People have just switched off when you have started talking. So effective communication has to be done at both sides, whether to management and the teams below.
Okay, sure. And I would like to know if when you receive news of a patch with a high CVE score, how do you handle it?
One, fortunately, we have tools that update automatically with such reports, and you can run a tool across the entire infrastructure.
Okay.
You give you reports of exposed assets that have that CVE. So there are assets that will be more exposed than others depending on where they are placed. If they are in a DMZ, then that one is a more critical thing. If it's internal, that it's an air-gapped place or it's harder to get to. You focus your effort on where the risk is highest for that CVE. But really, how I go about it is once it's identified, because we do threat intelligence daily, we get threat intelligence. So once it's identified, run an assessment across your infrastructure to see if you're exposed to such a CVE, and then concentrate effort where it's easiest to breach. And as you work towards the harder to breach assets that have that same vulnerability that has been identified. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephen, your conversations, I don't want them to end, but you're fast spent on time. So, any parting shots you would have for us?
Mine is, I think as an industry, we need to really come together and compare notes on what are the practical ways we can defend our organizations. Because everyone seems to be working in silo, and when you engage, it's either just a hash or what are those best practices? What is Postbank doing that it can share with the industry on how best to be on this, to implement cyber defense? Because we have a skills gap, and those that are employed are also burning out because of the workload that's available. So how can we come together as an industry, whether it's insurance, health, banking, but as a cyber industry, how can we come together to ensure that the appropriate controls are in place and we can share notes? Because these fraudsters who are doing this stuff, they'll keep on going entity to entity, and they'll find the same weaknesses, and that's how they are compromising these weaknesses. So those that have not had, what are they doing? How can they share? And how can they share in a way that doesn't expose them? That's also another thing. And because you may be sharing to a fraudster and he's just taking notes on
Okay.
where to pass.
They're like,
So
okay.
how can we come together? Because you find it in many industries where people are coming together and comparing notes. HR has an industry. I know ISACA has its annual conference. But beyond the annual conference, where can we meet as an industry to compare notes and share best practices and what is working and what is emerging? Yeah, I think that's what that will help alleviate the skills gap that is imminent. And I think that skills gap is that's one of the reasons that's affecting the organizations. Because if you're hiring, who are you hiring? You've given them this money, they're commanding a premium. Are they up to the task? Do you only go by their certifications? What do you go by? Certifications can be bought. So it's that skills gap is affecting the industry, and we need some practical sessions to have to compare notes and see what works. Yeah.
Yeah, I truly.
So wait, Steven, before you go,
Yes.
you've had a very illustrious career. I would like to know if you're at liberty to share any one incident that shaped your career and how you handled it.
One incident. I think the incident that shaped my career was when I was in consulting, and we were doing a forensic, and every other time we would try and find out how did this thing happen. What is called fraud theory. Fraud theory is you're trying to build a case on how could this thing have happened. So every time we're coming up with that theory, someone would come and throw a spanner in the works and says, that can't work. But that couldn't be it because of ABCD. That thing changed my career because that's when I said, let me leave forensics alone. I go in defense. Because even when we're doing defense, you find, even when you're doing the investigation, you find that you have even no, the entity we're supporting with doing the forensics didn't have the appropriate controls in place that could aid a forensic investigation. Logs were not there, this and that was not there. So you realize that if the appropriate controls were in place, and even if this incident happened, at least we would be able to zero down on how it happened, because we have various sources where you can pick information from. But here you go in a place, the client is putting on pressure, he wants a report, there's nowhere we can get information from, and they have gotten a down payment. That was my last forensic investigation. Now, defense is the way. Yeah, I think that shaped my career for sure.
Outrightly, yeah.
Thank you, Steven. It has been a lot of information, and I kind of relate to that aspect of having a proper way of sharing information amongst people in the industry. I've talked to many people concerning that same topic, that there are so many incidents. Why don't we come up with like the way the US has the DBIR, Data Breach Investigations Report? I don't know, Verizon. Why don't we have something like that in Africa? So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Yeah. And I hope it will be able to be, implemented. So thank you, Steven. Your information is still loading in my head. I'm even going to go through this video and do some, overnights just on these videos to find out more information. But thank you, Steven.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I think one of my things I like is really talking about cyber and the experience I've had and how we can use it, because it's an area I'm very, very passionate about. Technology and cyber, really. It's areas that I'm passionate about. I'm actually considering doing defense classes, maybe on a month, I don't know, quarterly or monthly, if I can get the time. Practical defense classes, because I see it's an area, at least as a way to give back. It's something that I'm actually considering doing. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, for our listeners, one of what Angela was talking about, the guy who got traumatized when an incident happened. Yeah, it's Richard Kavanda. We had him on episode 29, so you can check out that episode. Other than that, see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steven, for your time.